Okay. I love ball pythons, but I've said so much good stuff about them in the past. Why do we need more positivity? I don't know. I want to talk about some things that kind of suck about ball pythons. There's really not many. I did my best to compile as many as I could think of, but it's good to make sure we're realistic about both sides of them because obviously not everything is going to be perfect with any interest or hobby. But here are a few things that kind of suck about ball pythons. Firstly, they tend to be known as a pretty picky snake time to time. It's not every single individual. It's quite a few of them though, and it happens at certain times, and usually this is really no big deal at all, but it tends to scare a lot of people, including me when I got my first ball python, and it's something that a lot of you come to me about. So essentially, they are just fans of going off feed a lot. Most often this happens during breeding season, so November to February or so, that pretty much lines up with their breeding season. That's also the time that they tend to go off feed the most often. So it is January right now. I'm sure there's quite a few ball pythons out there that are not eating, but it's not something to really be concerned about. It tends to happen more with snakes that are mature enough to breed, and some people say it only happens with females, but my male goes off feed every year, and he started doing so when he was like 2 years old. And this male right here is also not eating. This is a newer animal that you might have seen on Instagram, and he is actually a bit underweight right now. He was like that before. We still haven't gotten him to eat. I'm sure he will eventually, but that is just something to think about when you're looking at ball pythons. Even if they go off feed in July, there's different processes that you can use to make sure that they really truly don't want to eat, like trying different types of food, different times of the day, different temperatures of the food, different sizes, all sorts of things to actually make sure they genuinely don't want to eat. But sometimes they'll just refuse everything. Maybe it's for a few days or a few weeks or even a number of months. This can cause a decrease in weight. Usually they're going to stay quite steady. Mine don't really ever lose weight when they go off feed. They just stop growing for the time being. But even if a couple grams are lost, it's not a huge deal and it can be replenished. It's definitely something to look over, make sure all your husbandry is good and correct, because sometimes something like an incorrect temperature or humidity or something that might be stressing them out could be the issue. But that's the thing about them. It's a bit unknown as to what exactly is causing it each time it happens, but it's not too hard to figure out. Speaking of food, ball pythons are what I consider the biggest beginner snake. Anything larger is probably less of a beginner. It's of course debatable with each one. I'm sure there's some that I'm not thinking of. However, with that said, that means my clock always goes off in every video. However, because they get larger, it's essentially guaranteed that they're going to outgrow mice. So rats, it's usually not a big deal switching over to rats. I've only had to do it a couple times so far. However, my snakes switch from mice to rats without any issues. But there are people that have more trouble because they have different tastes or scents or flavors or whatever. They can be kind of weird about it and might have more trouble. I think it depends on the site. I tend to see rats are more expensive, and you could just start with very small rats from the very beginning, but not many people do that, and it seems like rats are less accessible from what some of you have told me, because you might not necessarily be able to find the right sizes. So basically, compared to a corn snake, which chances are they're not going to outgrow a jumbo mice, it's possible time to time I usually see adult corn snakes sticking to adults or jumbos. And then even if a corn snake or some other sort of beginner snake did outgrow those a little bit, you could always just feed them slightly more often or feed them more at once. But because ball pythons are definitely going to need those rats, it's possible you could still get by just doing multiple mice, but generally it seems to be better to just do one large rat. I should have a video comparing that. There's still some unknowns, there's still some disagreement with it that you have brought towards me, but you can watch that video on whether you can feed your snake more than one mouse at a time. The third issue you come to me most often about is humidity. I would also say it's probably the most complicated humidity of a beginner snake, maybe. But basically because they like to sit around that 60 to 65% range, maybe a little bit higher while they're shedding, some of you do have trouble doing that because you don't want like a damp enclosure. Now it depends entirely on the climate and what your room is like and what you're heating the enclosure with. I need to do more videos on this, but humidity can be a bit more difficult just because they're prone to stuck sheds if that is off, like a hognose or sambo. They can shed in super low humidity, that's just what they're used to. But a ball python, although they're in a low humidity climate, because they dwell in areas that have higher moisture levels, aka humidity. I'm just trying to say the word humidity. That's something to keep in mind. Again, definitely manageable if you still want the species, and there are plenty of ways to fix this. I talked about this in a video too. I need to update that video though, it's an old one. And ball pythons are a species that you'll see a lot of people keep in tubs and a lot of others keep in aquariums. If you ask me, both work fine. I think it's kind of stupid to say one does not work, because there's lots of variables. Like if you're in a very low humidity area, a tub might be ideal for your setup. If you're in really high humidity, maybe it's an aquarium or glass enclosure. Again, that's something we can go more in depth to later, but the humidity is not the most simple thing, but definitely not the biggest deal. So like I said, there's really not that many things, but those are the 3 biggest issues that I see coming up in the ball python keeping world and that you ask me about. So this is just to kind of help you anticipate those things if you're looking into a ball python. Again, probably my favorite snake to keep. But what are some other issues that you've had with ball pythons? It's kind of a weird question, but maybe I'm able to help out with those or find other people that know the answers that can help with those in the future and other videos. But those are the 3 things that kind of suck about ball pythons. I'll link a bunch of other ball python stuff in the description of this video. But that should be it for this video. So I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.